Bruh.
What the fuck? Bro, what the fuck? I just started recording. Okay, we're finally back. Jesus Christ. Okay, so The Weeknd. Look, he's always been someone I have listened to their music since 2015, but not intensively. In our dear Lord 2026, Abel Tesfaye has made such a name for himself for the past 15 years, but we'll get more onto that later. Ever since he focused his music on being more pop-centric, it's been more appealing, at least to me. And as far as like produced albums go, I would say Dawn FM is probably his best. And look, I understand something like After Hours exists, and I think that's just a more accessible of a listen than Dawn FM is. But for me, it didn't sound fully complete yet because it was the first time he was really transcending. I mean, take a song like Hardest to Love or even the title track. I consider these highlights, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was just missing. I mean, by that point, it was his best looking back in hindsight. Now, if y'all want me to review After Hours on a more deeper level, I could definitely do that. Now, for me, Dawn FM refined his 80s sound into something a lot more polished and seamless, even if After Hours had more and bigger cultural moments. But just let it be known that I firmly believe that Dawn FM, this album you see right here, it's his best produced album to date.
Wait, when did you know for a second that it might work?
What?
While Dawn FM is the album I will be reviewing today, I have to establish who The Weeknd is as an artist, or who he was by the time Dawn FM came out. Starting out in the early 2010s, specifically with the mixtape trilogy, Abel started out as a mysterious online persona who would release music around 2009 and 2010 under a username on YouTube with no label. That will be the case for his mixtapes alone, as they were self-released. Now, his overall mixtape trilogy wasn't that great by any means, and look, I definitely understand that it set the tone, definitely a massive restart button for R&B in the 2010s. However, I can't say that they're just flawless. I would say that they're most definitely worth their time because there are highlights, and just like with any other influential record that exists that's out there, I would say that House Balloons I would consider like an historical document for music history when it comes to R&B, especially for the 2010s. And from this mixtape trilogy, I would recommend Wicked Games, The Zone,
all these broken hearts on that pole. Man, if pole dances are art, you know what I mean? Fucking artists I know.
and his cover of Dirty Diana. That one's pretty good. By 2013, he released Kissland, and I do remember enjoying the project at the time when I first listened to it, about over a year ago, I believe. And looking back now, it might be boring in hindsight. It definitely had a lot of the same elements of the mixtape trilogy that I did not find appealing. I mean, for what it's worth, check out Wanderlust. I don't know. And that's not me saying the project is bad. That's just me saying I have said opinion about said music. Okay? Okay. Now, after that direction that he was going by 2013, at that point in his discography, I just thought that he just wasn't going to muster up any form of change in his music. Or at least that's what I thought before I even got to his next project, Beauty Behind the Madness, in 2015. Now, I would say this was like the first time he shifted his sound to more of a pop direction. Biggest examples of this style was, of course, Can't Feel My Face and The Hills. Now, if you were growing up in 2015, there were probably multiple times you would hear these songs from the internet, specifically from that one internet trend where all these memes were getting remixed into songs.
Do you wanna build a snowman?
You had to be there to remember. All in all, those two songs proved that Abel could easily write pop in his writing and in his overall production style. Thankfully, he would continue to experiment with more kinds of sounds on his next album, Starboy, in 2016, dabbling more into 80s style of production. And while I don't think that this is as amazing as I made it out to be when I first listened to it, some of my all-time favorite Weeknd songs land on there. It just so happens to also feature my favorite electronic music duo, Daft Punk. Now, if you've seen my video on Alive 2007, you probably get the basic gist of how I feel about this duo. And when it comes to their inclusion on this record, for two songs, unfortunately, they might be the best ones here. I mean, what is there not to say about I Feel It Coming, the closer, which I was pretty disappointed that Fantano did not mention in his goddamn review. I mean, I love the vocals from Abel. The Daft Punk production isn't the best, but I consider it a highlight. Then we got treated to My Dear Melancholy in 2018. There's not a whole lot to say about this EP other than the fact that It's him going back to his mixtape days, which is nice. It was a pretty nice little EP, I would say. A lot of people got on to me about not ranking it in my tier list I did all those months ago. I mean, for what it's worth, I mean, it's not high priority for me, but I think you should check it out if you're interested in his music. And then there's After Hours. Regardless of how I feel about the project, this album marked the first time he really transcended as an artist. It addresses some of the qualities of Starboy that was missing. It was more daring than previous projects, more willing to expand on the 80s style production on tracks like Blinding Lights, which was massive at the time, if you remember. Now, I loved how he turned his songs into more cinematic and more storytelling driven. Granted, many critics and fans hailed this as his like magnum opus or his best work per se. If it hasn't already been made clear, I'm not one of those people. Now, as I said in the beginning, it was just something that was missing in the production style. And sonically speaking, I thought there were some flaws that came with pushing his artistic vision forward, which is nothing new. It's nothing new to have an artist to be doing something that's so transcended, even for like its big cultural moments, to not be perfect. Again, if y'all want me to review After Hours to better explain this point, while also doing everything else that I'll be doing in this video as well, I will gladly do so. I mean, y'all see me make a whole video, 18-minute video on Porter Robinson's Nurture. I think I could do it with any album at this point. Dawn FM was then released on January 7th, 2022. Okay, so here are some of the stuff that actually went into it. This is going to be a pretty long-ass section, or at least that's from the way I wrote this. It was created as a deliberate creative pivot and conceptual evolution for him, building directly on the success and themes of After Hours, while serving as a second chapter in his trilogy that he would later complete with his most recent project, Hurry Up Tomorrow, which is also great, by the way. Also check that out. This album was stemmed from a period of creative struggle after Hours. Abel initially worked on material that felt too dark, depressing, and non-cathartic, mirroring his personal state amid fame, the pandemic, and introspection. He described scrapping or shelving that direction because it wasn't providing the emotional release he needed. Instead, he shifted something to more fantastical and escapist, framing the project as a form of therapy or fantasy escape. The core concept came from a vivid mental image, being stuck in gridlock traffic in a tunnel inspired by the LA's notorious traffic and possibly a symbol of limbo or purgatory, while waiting for the light at the end with their radio station 103.5 Dawn FM, guiding the listener through a painless transition into the afterlife or enlightenment per se. The radio broadcast format structures the entire album with seamless transitions between tracks, almost like a DJ mix, which I actually do appreciate. Interludes, fake commercials, and narration from Jim Carrey as the upbeat philosophical DJ who welcomes you to the radio station and offers reassurance and existential themes of death, regret, redemption, and letting go. And oh boy, the production, people who were on production for this, it was a pretty star-studded cast. Production and creation process involved a star-studded collaborative effort in Los Angeles studios, primarily in his home setup and professional spaces. Abel was a executive producer alongside Swedish pop hitmaker Max Martin, experimental electronic artist Oneohtrix Never, Oscar Halter, others like Calvin Harris, Swedish House Mafia, TV Hits, and much more. Recording drew from 80s synth pop, disco, new wave, and funk influences with polished dance floor radio production, contrasting the heavier lyrical introspection about morality, past mistakes, toxic relationships, and self-forgiveness. Features ranged from Tyler the Creator, Lil Wayne, spoken word from Quincy Jones, Josh Safdie in a parody ad, and Bruce Johnson of the Beach Boys on backing vocals. And Jim Carrey's role was quite personal, as Abel and him were neighbors in LA who bonded over telescopes and shared a Canadian connection, given that Jim Carrey was Abel's childhood hero, like, you know, of course, watching The Mask that started his artistic journey. Carrey narrated key interludes and closed with the poetic Phantom Regret by Jim, a spoken word piece on unwinding the mind and aligning the soul, finding the divine boogaloo, as it were. Now, let's dive into the track list itself. Alright, this is the longest video. Okay. The opening title track is a gateway into the album's world, a fictional radio station called 103.5 Dawn FM, broadcasting in a liminal space, often interpreted as purgatory or the waiting room after death, following the events of After Hours where his career seemingly died. It opens with ambient sounds, like chirping or subtle synth swells over an evoking sunrise. Think of this song as a tone setter for the project. It gives off a lot of qualities that will soon come on the track list. Very cinematic to the point where I felt like I'm floating through a time machine into this world. Abel gives us a short and haunting verse that expresses the core fear of isolation or nothingness afterward. Jim Carrey represents a disembodied voice guiding us into this world, reassuring the listener due to the album's darker themes, and we'll get to those darker themes later. While there's not a whole lot to this track, I'd say it was a nice entryway into the album.
It's 5 a.m. my time again.
Okay, now this track. Gasoline. Okay, look, I understand that Abel's vocal style on this track isn't necessarily that great as far as like what his diehard fans I guess are used to, but for me it's definitely a bold style to go with. There's synth pop fused with new wave. It's very shimmering by the time we get into the chorus, so I love the fuck out of that chorus. Lyrically, it dives into insomnia, nihilism, addiction, and a deeply codependent toxic relationship. The track stands out sonically as one of the album's most progressive and floor-filling cuts, near futuristic yet nostalgic, with low robotic undertones and verses shifting to soaring falsetto choruses. Now, the term gasoline is used metaphorically, symbolizing fuel for self-destruction, a desire to burn everything away, drenching oneself in something volatile to escape or end the cycle. I also love the gutsy breakdown towards the end of the track. That's like my favorite bit. And when he brings up putting up him in sheets and pouring gasoline on him, could be, I interpret it as like a sign of literally entering the afterlife, which is proven on the chorus, like I mentioned earlier. I would call this the real opener of the album, and I don't think it's that half bad. Now, the way this plays into like the world of Dawn FM, I mean, it's vividly shown in the music video for it. An elderly version of him drives confused with the radio glitching because he's not fully transitioned yet. After crashing, he enters a surreal and demonic rave or nightclub full of distorted feelers. Abel confronts his younger self, leading to an emotional breakdown, violence, and a hallucinatory horror, symbolizing self-loathing, regret over past choices, and the fear that fame and addiction has corrupted him irreparably. Just like in the beginning, the ants on his hearing aid, I would say, depict aging and decay. There's snake imagery, and chest slashing evokes body horror and inner torment. Gasoline is pretty much a raw, unfiltered arrival point. No sugarcoating, just confronting the mess before any redemption. Okay, this is where we get to banger territory. There's a lot of punchy grooves in this track until it really builds into this high energy electro dance pop number with shimmering synths. Some of that production was with the help of Swedish House Mafia. I wish I was joking. I do like me some Swedish House Mafia, who have worked with Abel on Moth to a Flame previously, before this project. On the chorus, it's more of a desperation of love in a relationship, constantly questioning on what will it take to keep the relationship alive. He also questions his ego on the verses, acknowledging that begging for approval isn't his norm. However, all of the dark themes within the album have pushed him to this point, and the music video pushed this point further. He escapes the hospital, rips off masks, loses limbs in a bloody city rampage. Jesus Christ, the imagery. Battles demons, sewage creatures, encounters a giant moth, I wish I was joking, and causes chaotic destruction. But the turning point was when his body shatters like a cocoon, revealing a small child version of himself. And remember, we actually did get a bit of an autobiographical symbolism in the music video for like Snow Child from After Hours from Once Upon a Time. That part in the music video I mentioned, symbolizing rebirth, shedding the corrupted weekend persona, and returning to innocence. There's themes that draw from Metamorphosis, Jungian, Divine Child archetype, and the trilogy's arc of confronting and regretting past sins to achieve peace. The song is often called a sleeper hit, and I don't know if I would agree that it's a sleeper. I mean, it's not like I literally go to sleep to this, but I do get what they mean. I just disagree with that sentiment because of how epic sounding it is on the chorus especially, and the fucking breakdown and towards the end into the next track. Now, right off the bat, the best cut off the record thus far. Knowing a lot more music than I did back then when I first listened to this project, I hear so many influences, like to name a few, Donna Summer, Giorgio Moroder, Daft Punk, to name a few again. It seamlessly echoes disco, dance pop, funk, synthwave, and psychedelic elements. The beat goes for a while in the beginning because this is the extended version of the song and I love it for that. Shimmerink's vocal samples guide us into like the opening line, which isn't the best, however, it doesn't ruin the overall experience. Themes hinge on relationships, passion, and infidelity, with the upbeat production masking the sinister undertones of sacrifice and near-death ecstasy. And the breakdown in the third act is so mesmerizing. The beat and synth take charge as it kicks up a notch, bringing back those vocal samples from earlier in the beginning. It's productions like this that makes me believe that this is so much better than Blinding Lights. However, I want to make this clear and say that that song is still a highlight, but it's nothing compared to the fucking upgrade that is Take My Breath. Now, I gotta say, phenomenal guitar work throughout. Holy shit. There's some more influences from none other than Michael Jackson. Yeah, that's actually something I caught on now while I was going through this record for this video. No, it sort of reminded me of like Wanna Be Starring Something, or at least a track of that nature. It was surprising to note that this samples an Alicia Myers 1981 track, I Want to Thank You, which was news to me. The chorus proves this point even further with some more toxicity for your liking. The song dives into refusing to compromise personal freedom for love, prioritizing nightlife, excess, and independence over commitment. Continuing after Take My Breath, Abel wakes up dazed on the dance floor amid blinding lights and Jim Carrey's radio narration teasing the quote-unquote painless transition. I told you it was going to get dark. This track is purely a spoken word narration over subtle ambient synth pads and faint ambient or atmospheric textures with no beats whatsoever. No singing from Abel. Now, Quincy Jones delivers this heartbreaking story about his troubled childhood, so much to the point where that I nearly cried when I was listening to this. What can I say? I'm an emotional guy. And he opens up with how you won't know how to raise kids if you weren't raised as a kid. Quincy recounts his mother's institutionalization for schizophrenia at the time, which was called dementia precox, when he was 7, watching her get put in a straitjacket and get taken away from home. He also explains the lack of nurturing upbringing, leading to patterns of emotional distance. Those experiences led up to adulthood with relationships with women and his own children, admitting that he couldn't fully love or connect due to unresolved trauma. And it's even more sad to know that all of this due to his unfortunate passing in 2024. May he rest in peace. You gave us one of the greatest albums of all time in Thriller. A song like this slams the brakes. It forces confrontation with deeper pain, regret, and roots of destructive behavior. Jones's story mirrors Abel's reoccurring theme of the overall album. He has often referenced his own past, of course, having an absent father, strict religious upbringing, and drug-fueled isolation as influencing his patterns. It serves as a wake-up call in purgatory. This character can't keep escaping via nightlife forever. Trauma must be faced for any transition to peace or redemption. There's so much trauma in my... We got another big highlight on our hand, folks. Very dreamy and melancholic R&B city pop ballad, a nostalgic atmosphere that evokes Japanese city pop. Okay, so I was right about that shit when I first listened to it, and it feels a lot more subdued and soulful than the previous tracks, providing a reflective breather. There's another sample on this track as well called Midnight Pretenders by Tomoko Aran in 1983. It flips the original upbeat vibe into something more wistful and regretful. For a one-on-one comparison, I would say that it's on the same level when it comes to love bops. I would say it's on the same level as something like Something About Us from Daft Punk. I mean, I couldn't get that bass from that Daft Punk song out of my head when I was listening to this. I mean, it's about self-sabotage, the inability to commit due to past wounds, and the painful realization that opportunities for redemption slip away. For this album's narrative, Abel's persona is pleading for a second chance at love and connection, acknowledging his flaws, but realizing time and life has run out. The music video continues the sonic direction of the project. It opens with The Weeknd alone in a hotel room, then encounters a mysterious woman. They connect instantly, dancing, stealing a karaoke machine, singing the song together in elevators and ballrooms, sharing joyful montages. Over time, it shifts to horror, a bloody champagne, surgical imagery, an age-deformed version of him reaching out desperately, like the same one from Gasoline. And of course, the video ends with the older self in a operating room as Jim Carrey places a new mask on him, symbolizing forced rebirth, ego death, or stripping away the facade to face reality.
Strike a pose when my kinfolk from it.
Oh my god, we got Tyler the Creator, and I love some Tyler the Creator. Now, Tyler has got to be my favorite feature on the album, like period, point blank period. I often tend to skip over to his verse. I just can't help it. I just love his verse. I don't know what to say. Now, the sound is very silky, atmospheric, soft rock with gorgeous harmonies, subtle synths, and lush backing vocals. Bruce Johnston of the Beach Boys contributes to the song's sound. It's calm, uplifting, almost celebratory in tone, with a graduation or wedding ceremony crisp production. This track shifts from the regret and trauma in the previous track into a defiant, self-aware embrace of new romance despite past patterns. Boasting about his success while admitting he's falling in love again, he swore off. Tyler's verse warns about love's conditions, advising a prenup, noting it's not unconditional, and cautioning against idealizing it. The song highlights Fame's high masking, depression, and cycle of heartbreak and cautious optimism in new relationship, possibly referencing rumors of Abel dating Angelina Jolie once upon a time and shading ex-Bella Hadid's then boyfriend. He distracts himself from trauma by boasting himself up, while Tyler adds pragmatic skepticism. Okay, sorry, I had to get some water. This is going to be the longest recording session I ever done on an album. Please bear with me. This one is presented in more of a dark tone with heavy bass synth pop and R&B. There's a gritty electronic edge to it that I enjoyed as well. It has a menacing, almost trap influenced undercut beneath retro layers. Believe it or not, it was originally intended to feature Ariana Grande. Given their history, I mean, I love Save Your Tears with Ariana Grande on it, but that version didn't make the cut. The song is a blunt, self-protective plea to keep things platonic after crossing physical romantic territory, essentially saying, don't catch feelings because I can't handle the responsibility. Or in other terms, whenever two people love each other very much and the father does not want to handle the responsibility of having a child, so therefore he leaves, if I want to put it in another way. I mean, it's all about the fallout from blurring lines in a friends with benefits dynamic. Abel's persona owns his flaws. He knows that he'll get clumsy and destroy things, while shifts some of the blame to the other person for potentially overstepping. Now, its role in the album is to brag about fame and new flings, but it pulls back, refusing to sacrifice emotional safety for love, even as he acknowledges the pattern. It's a defensive stance in limbo, clinging to surface level connections to avoid deeper regret or vulnerability, stalling true redemption or transition into the light. What am I doing? The light's right here. Thankfully, we keep ourselves on the right track. It doesn't get derailed because it's also a highlight on the album, filled with pulsing melancholic synth pop with atmospheric beats, shimmering retro synths, and a haunting cinematic feel. This is another example of confrontation, but this time it's a confrontation of insecurity, jealousy, and fear of betrayal. Abel suspects his partner is seeing someone else and demands honesty, while admitting his own past infidelity and claiming personal growth. Jesus Christ, at that point, I would have gotten advice from Applejack.
I only met you in my dreams before.
Okay, story. Okay. I don't know if I'm the only one, but this is where we get into some shaky territory. Just for this one song, trust me. While I don't mind the overall production style as a dreamy soft ballad, it's not something I care that much all about. But for the sake of this video, and for the sake of you guys watching, because it's gonna be a long ass video, I'm gonna explain it anyway. It explores an idealistic hope, vulnerability, and willingness to dive into love despite past scars. The title of the song refers to being overly optimistic and dreamily enthusiastic, contrasting the cynicism from earlier tracks. It's a tender offer to support a special girl who's emotionally damaged, positioning Abel's persona as a healer or savior figure. Jesus Christ, please don't go on the savior complex. Despite the album's reoccurring caution about love's dangers, he seems to be ready to risk it again, caring deeply enough to help her heal. Here we have another track that is spoken word. It's a recited poem adapted from Rainier Maria Rilke Duino Elegies. Please forgive me if I'm butchering that. It's specifically from a famous opening poem of a written poem that was written in 1912 to 1922. And Abel delivers it in a calm and almost whispery tone. The repetition of the title echoes like a mantra, emphasizing awe mixed with fear. And the original poem contemplates the overwhelming destructive beauty of angels, and Abel uses it to evoke existential dread, the sublime terror of the unknown, the afterlife, over divine judgment. It injects cosmic horror into the journey, reminding us that beyond regrets might involve annihilation of the ego or facing the unbearable truth. It sets up the album, final act of escalating chaos and reflection, showcasing resistance to full surrender. And the commercial bit on here is every bit as funny as you could possibly imagine as it is.
Makes your current life look like a total comatose snooze fest.
Don't break my heart. Okay. Oh, Jesus Christ. I can't help get a kick out of the chorus on the song. This one has shallow electropop R&B with dark disco undertones. It's a desperate pleading request to a captivating woman not to shatter the narrator's already fragile heart. He describes her as paralyzing and mesmerizing, someone who quote-unquote snatches my soul and leaves him crucified. While reflecting on past pain, there's a mix of religious imagery that ties into the album's existential and afterlife motifs. It highlights unresolved romantic wounds as a barrier to redemption. Clinging to potential connections keeps him in limbo. This one, surprisingly, at least from my interpretation and some research, we got some Prince-inspired work on this song. Given that funky old school disco R&B feel with splashy percussion, groovy bass lines, shimmering synth, and reminded me of When Doves Cry to a degree. The song is a confrontation with a woman. Jesus Christ, a lot of confrontation. Like, back off. It basically has like a woman that is pretty much cheating on Abel. If I had to put it bluntly, because I literally had a bit of a rough time explaining this. It's laced with hurt, hypocrisy, and a decision to walk away. Lil Wayne's verse reflects on the deception, warns about consequences, and touches on his own experiences with complicated relationships in the past. As far as his performance goes, I know I'm not the only one. This shit is not that great. Beat choice is not even, doesn't even fit his rap style, and the Dirty Harry line is, God damn it, does not go over well. Or at least that's the case when I turn my brain on, which is all the time, by the way. Yeah, we're entering like an hour. This is gonna be like a 41-minute video. Holy shit. Will this take me 2 weeks? Oh shit. My mind's going back to that Dogman video I did way back months ago, I think. Okay, the influence of MJ and Prince continues with the classic 80s inspired synth pop. But I swear to you, this sounds like an ABBA song. Please do not tell me this doesn't. And for frame of reference, this is less than zero to this album is what Vanish Into You was to Mayhem for Lady Gaga. The song is a confession of self-sabotage in a failed relationship. Abel's persona admits his toxic habits ruining something good he once had, basically being her hero, but his darkest truth eroded that, leaving him worthless in her eyes. It's a cathartic surrender facing the guilt that's kept him stuck in a transition, paving the way for the final cut. Finally, we're at the end of the album, not exactly the video, but the album. It's almost ambient with atmospheric synth pads, Jesus Christ, I feel like I'm repeating myself, and soft, shimmering electronic textures that create a serene, otherworldly backdrop, evoking a gentle fade out or ascension. Carey recites an original poem written by him that ties the album's core themes together. It opens with the familiar radio station intro before diving into the essential questions and advice. It's the central concepts, lingering ghostly regrets that haunt the soul even after physical death, trapping one in limbo because they can't fully let go. The poem urges self-forgiveness, acceptance of past choices, shedding grudges, expectations, and finding inner peace and heaven through the least rather than external validation. It's a measure of personal responsibility. Heaven isn't a place, but a state achieved by unwinding the mind and aligning the soul, and even amid chaos. Woo! Oh god, okay, we're finally at the end. Finally at the conclusion section. The overall concept of this album was very well executed, on Abel's part. There were so many influences that Abel pulled from that did not sound like he was just blatantly ripping them off. The production on this project is stellar throughout the entire runtime, and I'm glad he didn't stop utilizing this cinematic element in his music, as it's something that is done just as great on his recent project, Hurry Up Tomorrow. And I understand that After Hours is a bit more accessible as an album experience. I wouldn't call it perfect by any means. I would say the same thing for Dawn FM, in that it's not perfect either. There are some elements here and there that were a bit spotty, especially the Lil Wayne feature, Jesus fucking Christ. A couple of tracks that keep the momentum on a steady pace, keeping the songs interesting, as well as playing to the album's concept very well. I'm willing to give this an A. Okay, the aftermath. Okay, that's gonna be a new element for these album reviews, or more or less deep dives. The album was widely praised for its ambitious concept, cohesive production, emotional depth, and bold sonic shift to the euphoric synth pop, disco, and amid dark themes. This solidified the trilogy narrative, with Dawn FM as the introspective limbo chapter. Many fans and critics view it as his most cohesive and thematically bold work, blending escapism with existential reckoning. It influenced retro synth trends and inspired deep fan analysis of the character's arc. And if you want to know what that is, please go check out those videos. Those are pretty informative ass videos. Some I see it as a high point in Abel's evolution from dark R&B to cinematic pop. Some fans call it a flop relative to expectations, lower than After Hours or Starboy. They're idiots. The biggest aftermath success would have to be the After Hours Till Dawn tour, launched in 2022 and still ongoing in 2026. That became a monumental phenomenon, directly tied to Dawn FM's era. Wow, this was a lot of fun to do. I'm sorry for no videos for a whole ass month. I've been going through a lot of things mentally, but I've been doing better. Or at least better than I was in January. Jesus Christ, January was just not my month. And speaking of doing better, I've been also going to therapy. And speaking of going to therapy, it's a bit of a hint of what the album I'm going to do next. And yes, I'm going to be doing it in this format, as I think it's a lot more fulfilling. And I've been thinking about doing this format ever since I did that Porter Robinson video, which I'm so glad some of you guys actually enjoyed, actually appreciate it. Anyways, that's gonna be all for now. I hope y'all enjoyed. Please like, comment, and subscribe. This is a long ass video, and I hope it goes over well after I make the edits and everything else, because again, this is so much fun for me to do. I'm so glad I got back to doing this for you guys. And if you're watching this up to this point, thank you. Like, it fucking blows my mind that any of you even watch the entirety of some of these videos. Let me stop yapping. I'm gonna go. And as always, I'll see you on the next video.